Is it shortcut? Check if you're managing to get the signal. Oh. Did you have to do something? No. Yeah. Supposedly just works. Should I stop those first? This is good. Let's see if this works for you. Yeah, I'm going to try it now. Try it again. Oh, wait. Okay. What's that? Here. Oh. Start last time. Okay. So, welcome to the HTTP authentication working group session. Blue sheets are going around the room. Please write your name on one of them. And besides, you also have to read and accept the contents of the next slide, which is thankfully not in Spanish. Okay, I'm sure you've seen this not once but several times. So let's start with the agenda. We've got the Note 12, which we've already seen. Agenda bashing, which we'll get to right away. And the blue sheets are going around. Then we're going to talk about document status, mutual auth, because the mutual auth set of documents is the last thing that we have in our charter. And then we'll see a presentation by Yaron for draft use of SRP method. And if we have time, open mic. Anything missing there, or anything that should definitely not be here? Any agenda bashing? Okay, cool. So, on to document status. Okay, so the basic and digest authentication drafts were published on September 30th. Now that's before Yokohama, but since we didn't meet in Yokohama, I'm covering that as well. They're RFC 7617 and 7616 respectively. There's also an HTTPS document for updating authentication method, that's 7615. That was a 3-document set. Scram published just under a month ago. Thanks, Alexei. And we got revised versions of every document in the mutual auth set of documents. We've had language review, which in reality that's everything we would get, we might get in a GenArt review, so that's cool. We got it early for the mutual auth documents. So first thing, a big thank you to Corey Benfield, Melinda Shore, and Peter Yee for reviewing these documents. They can get as many stars as they'd like, all the stars that we have to give. Next, about mutual auth. So the plan going forward is to discuss it here. There's about 4 open issues. Have new versions incorporating both the language reviews and whatever we decide here by the end of April, then go to working group last call. And since this is a set of 3 documents and they're interdependent and altogether pretty large, we're going to let it go through most of May. Then, assuming everything's okay, we request publication early June, and then we might have RFCs by the time, well, that's too optimistic, but we might have them in the RFC editor's queue by the time we meet again, or not meet again, in Berlin. So. Oh yeah, good idea. We need a JabberScribe and someone to take notes. JabberScribe is particularly important because the main author for all the mutual auth documents is not in the room, although he is in the Jabber room, I'm assured. Maybe is he also in the Meet Echo? Great. Okay, so I need someone to take notes and someone in the Jabber room. You're in the Jabber room, thanks. Thank you. Okay, so the record will reflect that Stephen is in the Jabber room and Jeff Hodges will take notes. So next we'll see the slides that Mr. Oyo has prepared for us, and Rifat, you do the honors? Okay. There you go, stand beside the...
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so just we're trying to wrap up this work. So Yutaka has a few issues that we would like the work group to help us and maybe help him close those. Let's keep going to the next one. See what. Okay, first the thank you for the reviewers, and 3 of them, and each one reviewed a different document. That was very helpful. Thank you for that. Next. So he updated the draft. I updated the draft based on the feedback provided by the 3 reviewers, and he has still a few remaining issues. We want to get some feedback on those. Next. So the first one is talking about an optional authentication applicability, talking about how to like he has a specific text talking about successful HTTP responses, and current text talking about 200 and 206 and others, and he's suggesting that talk about 200 or 2XX instead, be more specific about those responses, and he has a few comments there about requirements and and different responses that applicable or not applicable. So anybody has any comments on this one? Any suggestion? Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So if I understand correctly, the current text says that the good responses are 200 and 206, and the suggestion is, oh, any 200 and anything could be okay, and in fact, only 401 is really the bad thing. Well, the bad thing that we expect.
Okay.
Is that a good reflection of the concern?
I think that's the concern. Alexei?
Alexei Malikov. I would just volunteer a person not in the room like Julian Reshke to have a look at this and then suggest his advice. Because, well, he done digest, he also know HTTP well, just to make sure it's aligned with other documents using HTTP.
Okay.
Just ask him specific issue.
Okay. So my sense of the room is that there's no strong feelings against making this change. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Next.
This is about parameters and the consistency, whether the parameter should be quoted or not quoted. And I think that's the extent of this comment, I think. How to send it, quoted or not quoted. Is there any? I guess I'm assuming if he's consistent, that shouldn't matter. But anybody has any comment on this one?
Anybody feel strongly either way? Quoted or unquoted?
Alexei, channeling Julian again, he will say you must understand both. So it doesn't matter what kind of, I mean, you can use one preference and examples, but you really have to understand both. There is no, I don't think there are exceptions.
So I guess usually you'd have your HTTP library anyway parse them correctly and understand both. I mean, you're not going to write special parsing code just for this header.
You would think so, but some people might. So I think it
Okay.
needs to be very clear that you have to understand both.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. And next. Set of additional password hash. I'm not sure what he is trying to say. Cannot use. I'm not sure what he's trying to say here. Is he? Oh,
Well, this is this is an option that exists in the current draft for working with databases that are already hashed, where you have the rather than a list of passwords, you have a password that are already either MD5 hashed or SHA-1 hashed. Okay. So this is there was the question of why only MD5 and SHA-1. Oh, Duck is there, so you can try the red button thing.
Hello. Can you hear me?
can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually,
go ahead.
it's really an optional feature. So the main purpose is in some live existing password databases already have some kind of MD5 or SHA-1 hash, and if we add this feature, users can convert existing databases to the newer mutual authentication password databases. But of course, it's not needed for any new databases. So I intentionally dropped newer hash algorithms like SHA-2 or something like that. But maybe it's really weird why many people ask that why you only include very older algorithms. So it's intentional, but not really understandable for many readers. So maybe we can add some new algorithms, or if people thinks the password migration is not important, we can drop it. But I think technically current things is the best way, at least I think.
If drop it is an option, I would suggest to drop it.
Okay.
Yovner speaking as an individual, definitely not add SHA-256 because there are no databases like that. So just for
Yes.
completeness doesn't make sense. And as for drop it completely, that's hard for me to say.
So Martin Thompson, it doesn't look like anyone's actually hoping to acquire any properties out of this, are they? I don't think anyone's expecting this to be providing any sort of security property, do they?
No, we're expecting to interoperate, to work with existing databases that are already hashed, and we're not going to change them.
So those ones won't have the additional hash, presumably. And adding a hash would allow someone to migrate the password database, basically saying that they know the plain text of the password. I mean, we've only got one layer of hashing here. It's not like we've got a big dictionary to search or anything. There's a low entropy secrets that we're guarding here.
I think that even MD5 does not weaken user-chosen passwords.
Right.
Way more bits in the output of MD5 than there are in user-chosen passwords.
The fact is there's only a certain number of discrete inputs that you can have. If you're going to be doing something like this, I would be suggesting something like bcrypt, and then we'd be off into the weeds again. I think that dropping it sounds reasonable.
Okay, so I'm hearing drop it. Is that anybody objects to that? Okay, next.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is just style. I guess the editor, the RFC editor will deal with that. So anybody?
Yeah, Alex, you just leave it to RFC editor. They are very good for checking for consistency. If you have an advice, leave a comment in XML in the document. Say, can you please double check that?
Okay, good. Okay, I think that's.
And that's all we have for that. Good. So thank you, Rifat, and thanks to you, Taka, for clearing things up. Going back to our original, I think our next thing is SRP. So, Yaron, you can come up. Slideshow, start.
Okay, HTTP SRP, I'm Yaron Sheffer, and this is joint work with Rifat. And this presentation is mostly a presentation of the schema rather than a progress since the last IETF or the last version. But of course, we've added the latest stuff as well. So SRP, for those who don't know, is a password authenticated key exchange. So the two sides authenticate with a shared secret, which is a password, so a short, human memorable shared secret. And this is an augmented password authenticated key exchange, which basically means that the server side doesn't need to hold the actual password. And the main benefit compared to the normal way people do HTTP authentication is that you don't need PKI. You're not vulnerable to the issues that are present in PKI, pinning, whatever. Next. So this is based on the generic HTTP authentication framework. It's good for HTTP, it's good for SIP, but realistically, we don't expect it to be used for, you know, your general web browser to web server connection. Probably more for stuff like web services. Next.
Before that, again, Yoav, as an individual, would that be a good substitute for websites that today use Basic or Digest? And I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah, except that we all know that those are few and far between.
Well, sure, but they do exist. I mean, where they exist, this could be a replacement.
Yes, yes, definitely. So running quickly through the message sequence, server setup, the server selects an explicit, so a literal, a large prime and a generator. When you set up an account, you select a hash function and the user salt and named realm, authentication realm, and then you create a verifier, which is what's stored on the server side, and you can see it on the screen. You store the username and the verifier, as well as the hash algorithm that was used, and the salt. Next. The latest version of the draft added realm discovery. So if the client needs to know what realm it is connecting to, if it is not as defined by the URL or URI that it is connected to, it is able to ask for a realm by sending an empty authentication SRP header and getting back the realm parameter, from which you can continue normally, as we will see in the next slide. So now I send just the username. The server authenticates with a challenge that contains all this stuff, the large prime itself, the generator, so the literal values of the Diffie-Hellman group, algorithm, salt, and the server public key, and those values are computed and go back and forth. 2 rounds for the whole thing, with proof of possession on both sides.
Sorry,
Alexei.
can I ask a clarifying question on previous slide?
Yes.
You don't seem to have any way to correlate requests and responses between different round trips. Do you have a session ID or anything?
What was the question?
Correlation of requests and responses.
So
Because they can actually, they don't have to come on the same TCP connection at all.
Yeah, correct. So
You need a way to correlate.
TCP connections, you mean?
Yeah.
So if you notice that
please speak to the mic, Rifat.
that server's public key is sent back by the client to allow that correlation, right? So you don't have that second authorization can come on a completely different TCP connection, and that server public key will be the one to associate both, right, together, right?
Okay. If it's not, well,
Go ahead.
I need to think about that. Might
Sure.
be sufficient. If it's not said explicitly in the document, you might want to just point out that's how you correlate.
So Martin Thompson, are you suggesting that the server public key is unique? to a given request? Every time.
Yeah, we're talking about a one-time authentication, right? Right. So yes, every time during.
Next. So the general benefits of SRP are resistance to dictionary attacks, both passive and active attacks, dictionary attacks on the wire, perfect forward secrecy. Like I said before, the password or a hash of the password doesn't need to be stored on the database. It is the password verifier that is stored on the database. Although the password verifier is in fact vulnerable to dictionary attack if someone gets hold of the server database. SOP is available royalty-free. It is, in fact, patented today, but with a certain license to it. It's widely implemented and actually defined both by an RFC that defines the protocol itself, as well as its use in, for example, TLS. Yes, Dan?
Dan Harkins. Ooh. So normally I'm generally in favor of PEGs. Why are you using SRP as HTTP? I guess my question is, what are you doing with the key? SRP is a key driving PEG. So what are you going to do with the key at this level?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The reason why we're asking is why we're using SRP is it's widely implemented. That's all there is to it.
No, I think Dan's question is, at the end of this process, there is a key, a shared key that's created between that client and the server.
Yes.
What is the plan to do with that? Like we didn't have anything in mind to do with that key, but there are some ideas.
So then, you can't say that you get perfect forward secrecy if you're going to throw the key away.
Sure. Yeah.
And
True.
And if you're going to throw the key away, it kind of like begs the question, why don't you just do it in TLS then? Or you could use the key to do something like authenticate the channel at the HTTP. This seems like, pardon my French, but it's sort of like masturbation. You're going to do all this work and then throw away the result.
So we didn't decide to throw the key. Like at this stage, we're saying this is the initial process of establishing that authentication, and after that you have a key. The application could use that, but this is something that we could discuss, right?
Okay. Is there a way to use it at this layer? I don't think there is there?
Sorry,
can you plumb the key somewhere? Could you plumb the key to SIP somehow? Is there some interface that you could?
As far as I know, there's no channel bindings defined for HTTP, so there's not much that we can do with that.
So the only option is to throw the keys away.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Or else to define something that will pass this key through HTTP and into TLS. Some sort of token binding, but we haven't, as you can see, we haven't discussed it yet.
And that's it.
Yeah. Well,
And that's that.
I guess that's a question for me, I guess. So I've got a few questions on that subject. So I'd like to remind the group that our charter is about creating small experimental documents, and our level of review is not the same as for standard Strack documents. And that was pretty obvious in the previous documents that we've made, basic and digest notwithstanding. Like to know if the people in this room, well, of course, we'll take it to the list like everything else, But I'd like to know if the people in this room think this idea is worth pursuing, unless Stephen has something to channel first.
I have something to channel. It's just a general question. I don't know if you want to take it now or wait a second. Right. So I was asking in the Java room, do you have some specific reasons not to use mutual except the choice of cryptographic algorithm?
So I didn't get the question.
Why this? Why not mutual?
Not mutual.
Mutual of the other document for this group.
Oh, I think one of the or some of the reasons is that it's already implemented. It's widely used. It's free, royalty free. So that these are, I think, good reasons to to go for this, right? So that's the answer.
I also have a question as me, if you want me to take that now, not as an AD, but just as a random question. Do you know, or would you suspect that if you do adopt this work item, that there might be other PAICs that want to do this similarly, or do you think this is like a one-off kind of thing, just for information?
Well, so when this working group was formed, when we were doing the buff that ended up creating this working group, I thought that we were going to get like 4 or 5 different PAICs. I was half expecting to get a Dragonfly one, but that didn't happen. So we ended up just with mutual. So it's not really surprising that we have another one, but no, as far as I know, there's no other people queued to and waiting to submit more drafts with more PAICs in this space. Dan, that was not a challenge.
No, I'm just saying I'd be happy to write a draft, but it doesn't make sense to do a PAIC at this level. So I mean, I guess the reason you don't have more is because I guess other people probably looked at it and thought, what's the point of doing a PAIC if you're just going to throw away the result? You know, if the benefit of a PAIC, is authentication that's resistant dictionary tag, and you've got this special key that has perfect word secrecy, and you throw it away, it's sort of like, well, why did I do all that work?
There's still value in using authentication methods that are not clear text like BASIC or even sort of MD5 like digest. There's a good value in doing something better than BASIC.
So is the idea here that you're going to do, you're not going to do HTTPS, you're going to do HTTP authenticated with SRP, and then what? You throw away the key, and now you've got, and what are you doing?
And then we know who the client is, who the user is.
But you have no binding to his subsequent packets. It would be nice if there was somehow you could, authenticate all of the packets that he sends to you and that you send back to him using the key that you just mutually derived. But you're not. But you can't do that. So
Can't do that.
What's the point?
Why I can't do that? What do you mean by that?
Well,
because there's no definition to encrypt HTTP packets by HTTP auth, right?
Right. I mean, the usual thing for HTTP to do is the point where you get the authentication done, you also plant a cookie. You send a set cookie, and then you continue the authentication using set cookie or some other authentication continuation method.
Okay. So again, Moira, he says you can implement SRP on top of mutual auth, just specifying the algorithm.
Yeah, I don't think that's one of the algorithms that's already in the set of documents, but I mean, they have an algorithm draft that could be used with mutual auth, I guess. Okay, so
back to me again, as me. So the answer is we don't know of any, and if adopting this will be a kind of probably a one-off decision. That's what it sounds like.
I mean,
no, that's just, I'm kind of neutral on it, but I just wanted the information.
Scrum as well could be set up on top of mutual auth, and pretty much anything can be set up on top of mutual auth. So, given all that, and given that we are already in the final stages of, well, not standardizing, but publishing one PAIC spec, do you think this And by this I mean SRP over SRP as an HTTP authentication method is something that's worth pursuing at all. Okay, let's see a show of hands. How many think this is worth pursuing? Okay. How many think this is definitely not worth pursuing? Okay. So excluding document authors, that's pretty much 1 and 1. Does you tap on something? Yeah. Look. Yes, you're on. Yutaka, you're on. Mr. Oiwa, you are on now.
Yes, I'm really sorry, but if you think there is no specific reason that you cannot use mutual, I think I strongly recommend to consider using it because it already has many features like session continuations and other all things that will be needed for both HTTP 1.1 and HTTP 2.0. So I personally don't be convinced that you need one more framework for accepting fake authentication.
Okay, thanks. So, yeah, you're on.
If I may, I would like to expand a little bit on the answer to Dan's question. So yeah, obviously authentication when you don't have encryption is, well, we know what it is. We know what we get. We know that we don't get any binding between the first authentication session and subsequent messages. Well, that's clear. However, I think that mutual PAKE-based authentication, such as this one, in the presence of normal TLS server authenticated with, a VeriSign issued cert, I think that actually adds a lot to the security of the connection. So if I don't like the level of authentication that I'm getting from the WebPKI, and many people don't, this plus, yes, channel binding into TLS would provide you a significantly higher level of security.
Okay, so does this change anybody's mind so that now they think that it is worth pursuing? Not much. Well, assuming that we decided that it was worth pursuing, do you think it's appropriate for this group? Yeah, probably, yeah. No other group would take this. Does anyone that includes the authors have any plans to implement this? In previous things that we passed through this working group were implemented, and mostly in experimental stuff like Python scripts, or, well, the mutual auth people have an actual modified Firefox with their algorithm implemented. Do you plan on writing any implementations?
Potentially.
Well, potentially. Okay, so would anybody be interested in reviewing, offering text? Yeah, maybe Alexei. And Dan, assuming that we, well, do we count on an area director for having the time to review and offer text? Okay. And well, I think we can skip the last question. So my view of the feel of the room is that there's really not much interest in accepting this. We will take it to the list, of course. Leave people time to reconsider and may decide that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But unless we see a totally different answer from the mailing list, I don't think we're going to take this. Anybody feel differently can use the time we have left for open mic to say that I'm totally wrong and that we really should adopt this or anything else. And I guess in that case, I guess we're done for today, and this is very likely to be the last meeting ever of the HTTP authentication working group. So we might be closed by next time or shortly after. So thank you for coming. If anybody hasn't signed the blue sheets, please do so and pass them on to us. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, please, we want this. Stephen is holding a PICX meeting at Atlantico A tomorrow at 7:45. Tomorrow at 7:45. Atlantico A.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's where the secretary thing was. Yeah. Okay. And that's to discuss the possibility of making a new PICX working group. Might come back. Never know. Yeah, that's what they do. It was some irritation to the application. Some residents are like It's one group that produces the set of genetic variables variations can do this. Right, no, we have a take like signature one that scratch. You go up. Sure. But I think it was demand for yes, for people. There is a safe space. It was demand for one of those. We're all talking yes. Yes. There's
The other thing is that the charter also says charter that was one of the reasons we didn't have one of the reasons you didn't have people opposing this work because I do these that we charter. Maybe nowadays we started this thing very much. You're just doing that with something. Yes. Whereas if we had said we had to do everything, they would have been probably against. The demands, the applications, demanding us weren't there. Particularly for us. They're still not. They're still not. Okay.